a team that fights together, stays together. Double down. Triple down. 2 for 1. Yes! 3 down. Keep this up and the battle is yours. Fantastic work.
Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Diaslayers, and in this video, we're going to discuss and review one of the best aggressive frame shotguns, if not the best aggressive frame shotgun in the entire game, and it's known as the Imperial Decree. If you were ever so inclined, you might even say that this Imperial Decree is going to give you a shotgunning degree, pun intended my friends, but you might be asking yourself, well how exactly are we going to determine this? To you my friends I say, this is going to be analyzed by looking at the weapons pellets. How many of those pellets are actually required to kill somebody, the range values at which you can actually still one-shot somebody, the weapons perks, its PvP stats, and of course the ideal God Rolls that you need for both PvE and PvP. However, before we can get into any of that kind of stuff, you guys have to understand how to get your hands on this magnificent beauty. And the way in which you do so is from right there on screen. And that is of course the rune combination that's going to give you this thing via the Menagerie. You may or may not have noticed that that's for a range masterwork, and the reason as to why that is of course you want the maximum range possible for all shotguns, but specifically aggressive frame shotguns, and that's what we're going to get into in just a few minutes. So without any further delay, the only thing we have to do is still just hit the notification button, and let's jump right into the video. Many of you are already familiar with the fact that I love to look at weapons TTK stats first, but because this thing is a shotgun, well, it's got an instantaneous TTK. The question that we have to ask ourselves then becomes, how many pellets are required to actually down somebody with this Imperial Decree? Let it be known that every single aggressive frame shotgun always shoots 12 pellets, guaranteed every single time. And associated with this then is a damage output somewhere in between 21 points of damage or 22 points of damage per pellet. The reason why I know it's somewhere in between those two values is because when you have these pellets, you then see those damage values 21 and 22. And so what this then tells me is that the game is then rounding in between one of those two values, and thus we get a value of 21 or 22. Now when you take into account that the average Guardian has a health in between 0 and 10 resilience, which is then associated to say somewhere in between 186 and 201 points of health, that then means this Imperial Decree is going to require 9 pellets of its 12 to actually down somebody. And that's then going to be with a damage value associated in between 189 points of health all the way out to 198 points of health. In other words, this could be somewhere in between say 3 resilience and 9 resilience, but nonetheless, what I want you to take away from this is that with those damage values, you're then going to need at least 9 pellets. As you guys can see from right there on screen, that's all the information that I've just said. And so the thing that I want you to keep in the back of your mind is that you can then miss 3 pellets with every single shot. And that right there means that this Imperial Decree and other aggressive frame shotguns have a very significant margin of error that you can still miss by and actually still get that one-shot kill. So the way that you can amplify this even further is by the weapons perks and increasing the weapon's overall aim assistance or the weapon's range to make it just that, more consistent. Now we'll get into all the weapons perks and those desire perks that can do just that, along with the specific roles that you guys would look for to be quote-unquote a God roll in both PvE and PvP. But for right now, what I just want to do is I want to look at my God roll on this particular Imperial Decree, and as you guys can tell from right there, this thing's got moving targets, slideshot, accurate rounds, Smallbore, a range masterwork, and an Icarus mod. The reason why I love this roll so much is because it pertains to the ideology that I mentioned from earlier, and that is that with moving targets, I'm then going to be able to increase the weapon's overall aim assistance per individual pellet due to this one perk alone as long as I'm aiming down sights and moving. This moving might pertain to something like say sliding, and when I'm doing that action, I'm then going to also proc slideshot simultaneously. And that then means that I'm also going to get a little bit of an increase in range while reloading the weapon all at the same time. When you take into account accurate rounds, Smallbore, and the range masterwork, that's then going to give the weapon a base range increase by plus 27, which is astounding. And not just that, it's also going to give the weapon stability factor an additional plus 7 as well. The game footage that you guys have been seeing so far is with this exact same roll. But the question that you're probably asking yourselves is, okay, well, I saw that you also have on there rifle barrel, so why aren't you using that instead of Smallbore? And not just that, but what is the weapon's optimal effective range? Diaslayers, those two questions are going to be both answered in private matches this very second. And so as you guys can tell, here we are in private matches with my very good friend Mock Flux. And what I'm doing first is I'm taking out my Darcy and measuring 8 meters. As I do so, what I'm doing to ensure that this is going to happen is I'm shooting at different areas on my friend's body. And that's them, for example, the chest, the groin, or possibly the knees, and any of the above. From a couple of those shots, I missed a bunch of the pellets as I was shooting for the chest and the groin area. But then when I went down to the knees, bada bing bada boom, he died in an instant, and that's because almost every single one of the pellets managed to hit him in that perspective. Now I'm going to do this exact same thing one more time, but the only difference here is that I'm going back to 9 meters, I'm doing this a couple times, and lo and behold, I still happen to shoot him with that one-shot kill distance at 9 meters. After seeing that, I thought, okay, well, now that I know that if I shoot by the knees, I have a very good chance of having more pellets actually hit the target. And you'll see more of this in just a few seconds. But for right now, I want to test this even further at 10 meters. And so as you guys are seeing, I'm doing this over and over again, and I wasn't able to one-shot him with specifically Smallbore equipped. As I go into the weapons perks, I then change this from Smallbore to rifle barrel, and this is then going to give me an additional +3 in range at the cost of -15 handling speed. Now I haven't moved a single inch, and this is then entailing that I'm doing the exact same spot that we just did with Smallbore equipped. But as you guys are seeing, I'm still getting the exact same results. And so even though I had that additional +3 range, rifle barrel at 10 meters isn't making the slightest difference whatsoever, at least in terms of the weapon's overall one-shot kill effectiveness. In seeing all those test cases with this God Roll weapon, what you guys need to take away from this is one of two things. The weapon's effective range is at 9 meters for its one-shot kill potential. But even if you happen to have on rifle barrel, that one-shot potential isn't going to change in the slightest. And on top of that, if you do happen to have rifle barrel, that's then once again going to give you that decrease in handling speed by -15. And if you don't happen to have on snapshot with this weapon, I would highly recommend that you don't do that, because you certainly need that increase in handling speed to get that one-shot kill effectiveness that much faster by simply aiming down sights. The reason why I know this to be true is because once again, we're going to go directly back into those private matches, but this time around what I want you to notice is the weapon's pellet spread when I'm hip firing and aiming down sights. As I take these 3 shots via hip firing, you're going to see that every single one of these pellets is RNG based, and not a single time was it consistent from one shot into the next. And this is some characteristic that's going to happen on every single shotgun, and if you were to ask me, it's complete Muff Kevin Shred shenanigans and I despise it. But nonetheless, what I want to show you next is when I'm aiming down sights, we're still going to get a smaller compression, but yet at the same time, the RNG pellet spread is just going to be that, all RNG. Unfortunately, you don't have control over this spread in the slightest, but what you do have control over is where you're aiming. And so once again, I'm going to rewind this and show this to you guys one more time, and that I was aiming at the bottom line for each one of these test cases, and you're seeing that almost every single one of the pellets was above and almost the second line of where I was actually aiming. And this then tells you that what you have to do when you're aiming with these weapons is aim most likely at the lower part of the Guardian's body, so then the vast majority of the pellets have that much greater of a chance to still get that one-shot kill. In comprehending all these test cases and that information that I just gave you, I think that you now kind of get a better understanding of how you should use these aggressive frame shotguns by aiming at the lower half of the body. But a lot of you should have also remembered that a little while ago, I did a Baligant God Roll review, and just so that you remember exactly what that roll was, it's the exact same roll as this thing that I have on my Imperial decree. And so not only do you see that right there, but I'm also going to show you a side-by-side comparison analysis of these two weapons, and it shows you that this Imperial decree, at least in terms of the weapon's base stats, outplays it in every single category. The only one that doesn't is the weapon's magazine size, and if you were to ask me, that's only by 1, so it's not that big of a deal. But in terms of the weapon's range, handling, stability, and reload speed, Those are all significantly greater factors into determining as to how effective that shotgun can be. And just so that we can kind of see this all right there in more perspective, here's the weapon's base stats right there on screen. The most notable about all these base stats is of course the weapon's range factor, and with the perks that I happen to have on it, this weapon's range is going to be at 63 out of 100, which is absolutely astounding and incredible. But as far as the weapon's other base stats go, well, it's still pretty good for an overall shotgun, but even so, I'd still like to have that handling speed increase ever so slightly, as well as with the weapon's aim assistance, as those two things are either at 37 and 35 respectively. And seeing that, I just want to take one step back and explain to everybody as to why range is so vital on shotguns and for specifically these aggressive frame shotguns. Because what range does is yes, it's going to increase the weapon's one-shot kill potential, and yes, it's also going to increase the weapon's overall damage output at longer distances. But most notably about all that stuff is the fact that range is still going to increase the weapon's overall bullet magnetism, and it does so per individual pellet. Now when you combine this with other perks that are going to increase those pellets' aim assistance, like moving targets, you have a fantastic symbiotic relationship that is simply going to have a very high lethality factor because it's going to be that much more consistent. Again, what you're looking for is consistency, because as you guys saw from the previous test cases, shotguns are by nature inconsistent, and so it's up to us to try and find those rolls that are going to make the weapon more so, as well as being able to understand how to use it effectively, and that together is going to be very effective for you. And now that I've kind of hammered this ideology directly into your brain so that you won't forget it, what you probably are wondering is, okay, well, what are the perks that I should be looking for a PvP God Roll and a PvE God Roll? To you, my friends, I say, look intently at your screen right there, because these are all the perks that I would recommend for a PvP weapon. In the first column, we got Rifled Barrel, Smallbore, and Corkscrew Rifling, followed by Assault Mag, Accurized Rounds, and Light Mag in the second column, ensued by the third column of Full Auto and Slideshot, and last but not least, Swashbuckler, Rampage, Snapshot, and Moving Target in that fourth column. Of all these perks, if you actually break it down into one of two that I would recommend, I've got that roll with Smallbore, Accurized Rounds, Slideshot, and Moving Target, because that thing right there is going to be extremely consistent. But a second roll that I would definitely recommend is still a God Roll is one that you can tell from right there, and this thing just so happens to have Rifled Barrel, Accurized Rounds, Slideshot, and Snapshot sights. Now some of you might be thinking, hold on Xander, you just told me from earlier that Rifled Barrel is something that you might not want to get because it's not going to make an overall difference in the weapon's one-shot effective range at 10 meters. To you I say, yes, that is correct, but at the same time, if you happen to have something like Snapshot, then that is exactly the perk that you're looking for, because with Rifled Barrel, you're still going to get more of a range increase without having the deficits of the handling decrease that perk gives you due to the offset via Snapshot sights. And then when you couple this with, say, Accurized Rounds and Slideshot, that's going to make, yet again, a very consistent weapon, and that's exactly what we're looking for these types of weapons. Now you might happen to get a wide variety of other God Roll perks out there that could be fantastic for PvP. As long as there's some of the perks that you guys see from right there on screen, then you might have another God Roll, and that might be something like, say, Smallbore, Light Mag, Full Auto, and Swashbuckler. But remember, this is all based on personal preference, and so you know your God Roll better than anybody else because you know your playstyle better than anybody else. With this, you now know all the perks that you guys should look for a PvP roll. But what about for PvE? To you, my friends, I say that once again, I've got you covered. Because as you guys can tell from right there, in that first column, I would either recommend Extended Barrel or Full Choke, followed by the one perk in the second column, Assault Mag, ensued by the third column, which is then Grave Robber, and finally the fourth column to be either a Trench Barrel or a Swashbuckler. The whole goal behind a PvE roll is to try and do as much damage as possible as fast as possible, and so for you, that is going to have to include either Trench Barrel or Swashbuckler, and that's because with Trench Barrel, all you simply gotta do is melee somebody, and that's then going to instantly give you a damage buff along with a handling speed and I believe a reload speed buff as well, but I can't quite remember. And yet as far as Swashbuckler goes, all you have to do is either get a kill or melee somebody for a kill, and then you're going to get a damage buff just the same. With Grave Robber, As soon as you happen to melee somebody, you're then going to be able to proc a reload, or rather a portion of the weapon's magazine be reloaded instantly. And then when you couple that with, say, the other two perks that I just mentioned, they're once again going to have a symbiotic relationship. As far as the weapon's barrel option goes, that's really up to you and your personal preference, but with Assault Mag in that second column, this is an absolute must, as that's going to increase the weapon's overall rate of fire. And let's also not forget that all aggressive frame shotguns, once they get a kill, then increase their rate of fire yet again. And so lastly, you guys can really tell that this is all about having that synergy between one perk and the next, and for PvE, that's exactly the perk combination that you guys see right there on screen. I think it's safe to say that given the right role, this Imperial Decree can truly be fantastic and glorious and spectacular in so many ways for both PvE and PvP. But not just that, it's also going to eradicate, decimate, and incinerate Guardians in the Crucible, making them a little bit salty. Who knows, you might get a 7th column with just using this shotgun alone, and that right there is mind-boggling. But nonetheless, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this down in the comment section below, and whether or not you like it, you don't, you think it's fantastic, you think it's garbage, and all that kind of jazz. And no matter what you guys say, you always know that your opinions are certainly going to be respected. Lastly, be sure to watch the newest, check the latest, and share, comment, like on social media, because you are the greatest. That's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now, Diaslayers. And so as always, GG, TNT.